Hey, welcome to Storm Revelation. This is MP Rose. And let me just adjust my camera just a little bit here. Okay, so this series is basically the part 3 fatherless series. I did a part 1 and a part 2. Part 1 was just general information about the effects of not having a father in the home that children in general suffer and may experience. And then part 2 focused more on men and the effects of not having a father in the home and how that person would end up playing a machismo or a tough guy act, which would cause him to, get into physical aggressions all the time. And also him being disconnected emotionally and not being able to bond emotionally and always trying to compete with other men to prove himself to be a man. And today we're going to focus more on women and how not having a father in the home or growing up in a fatherless environment can affect a woman or a young girl as she grows up. And so there are a lot of detrimental problems that occurs, in a woman. And one of the many things that a woman may suffer from not having a father in the home is depression, low self-esteem, anger and rage, failed romantic relationships, always seeking approval and regretting the actions that she engaged in order to seek that approval. There's also fear of rejection. And then there's a compulsive need, again, to seek approval from others. And typically, daughters are basically obsessed with earning the approvals of their fathers. And if their fathers never gave them that approval, they seek that in relationship, in their interactions with other people, and in interactions in the relationship that they engage in with the opposite sex. And so one of the things that a woman may go through, and one of the psychological effects of growing up without a father, is anxiety. And typically it's a parent's job to be there for their child. And because of the daughter not having her father in her life, she ends up developing a lot of deeply rooted trust issues. She ends up developing anxiety as well as depression. And her anxiety is basically about everything. And we'll talk a little bit later on as to why it's about everything. But women who typically grow up without a father, they don't believe that anybody is backing them or supporting them. So they basically feel ambiguous or uncertain about the decisions that they make. So they don't know whether they're right or wrong, and they pretty much doubt their actions. They develop a lack of self-confidence and, of course, low self-esteem. And this is partly because they don't trust their own judgment. And they tend to be anxious about everything that they do, including the decisions that they make. And they tend to be anxious about themselves as well because of the uncertainty and the lack of confidence that she has within herself. The next thing is that a woman may suffer from depression. Now, one of the major things is feeling abandoned and not wanted. And because that woman feels abandoned and not wanted, she feels sad, about that, and can develop deep-rooted feelings and behaviors related to being depressed. And it makes them not want to necessarily be on their own. And so they typically doubt everything, and they typically don't feel safe around people. And that's what leads them to the depression, is because they feel like they're being judged on everything that they do. They don't trust, and at the same time, they don't feel safe, and thereby leading to loneliness and feelings of depression. And this also can lead into bad relationships as well, because they try to seek love in all the wrong places. Because they have low self-esteem, they tend to get neglected or feel even less love because of the wrong relationship that they end up getting into. And there was a study that actually showed that most of the depressed children who commit suicide were fatherless. And I'm going to give you a little bit of statistics about how fatherless affect women and what are some of the stats related to not growing up with a father in the household. The third issue that a woman may face is pretty much trust issues. And this is because of the depression and the low self-esteem and not having very much confidence in themselves. They typically lose their peace of mind And because of that, they always feel like they're rejected. And so they are pretty much left alone. And because they are left alone, they end up giving rise to this very deep rooted mistrust or trust issue. And they pretty much doubt everything around them and everyone around them. And because of this, they tend to not trust and think that anyone can be there for them. And they believe that that feeling of abandonment is something that's going to resurface again. And so they don't believe that someone will be there for them, in fear of going through that emotion and that feeling of feeling abandoned again. And these women tend to be very independent. And they try not to rely on other people for that fear of rejection or for that fear of being disappointed and having that feeling of abandonment. But they do suffer from chronic depression because of their loneliness if this woman is an independent woman. Low self-esteem, we talked about that, how severe a woman's low self-esteem can be because her father gives her worth and he teaches her how to love herself and how a man should love her. And if the father is not in the home, she doesn't have that sense of worthiness. And so she feels like she's not worth it. And that's where the low self-esteem develops. And on top of that, there's a lack of confidence as well that ends up developing. And because of the lack of self-esteem, these women tend to end up doing things that they later on makes them even more sad, or that they later on regret. And this causes them to end up experiencing even more depression, because now there's shame and guilt and other emotions affiliated with the actions that they did in order to try to gain the approval of the love to begin with. And typically these women end up doing things that put them in uncompromising or compromising situations, because they're seeking approval and they're seeking the love that they never got. And in order to do that, they need to be able to lose their own self-respect in the eyes of others so that they can end up feeling loved by whoever they're seeking that love from. And this basically continues to lower their self-esteem, their self-worth, and it basically allows them to be able to need more of that love in their life. And so it makes them seek that love even more, and it puts them in a very vulnerable and open position in order for them to continuously get hurt. So they're continuously in this cycle of them trying to seek approval and doing things that they feel regrettable and shameful about, but they continue to engage in it because they continue to seek and try to fill that void and that emptiness of not feeling worthy, not feeling loved, and not having the esteem and the self-identity that they need within themselves, and the self-respect and the morals and the values. All of that pretty much gets thrown out the window in order for them to fulfill that empty void that they are currently experiencing. Another area where a woman may suffer from is eating disorders. And the woman may suffer from nausea, binge eating, body dysmorphia, anorexia, bulimia, and a whole bunch of other eating disorder, because that woman tends to either overeat or not eat at all in order to fulfill that emptiness that she has. So she uses the eating disorder in order to try to fill that void and fill that emptiness that she finds very hard to fill. And so it continues that pattern of the dysfunctional mindset of she's not good enough, so she doesn't think that she's beautiful enough, or she thinks that she's fat, or she thinks that she's skinny, and she tries to fill that void with the food, which only leads to more emptiness and trying to fill that void. Which only leads to more emptiness and trying to fill that void. And so they basically try to assess their bodies and their body shapes, and they basically think that they're not good enough. And, so they go back and forth, and all of this is all trying to prove the affection of the father that they never actually had in their lives. The next area that they suffer from is addiction. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, children without fathers are more prone to engage in addiction like behaviors. And so what happens is that because of the lack of father figure in their lives, they use addiction. You know, it doesn't matter what type of drugs they're using, heroin, cocaine, weed, there's kratom, there's so many other, you know, there's so many drugs out there. It can be any type of drug. They basically use that as a way to escape from the pain that they're feeling and to also try to alleviate that pain that they're feeling. So they use the drugs in order for them to kind of fill that void, again, to fill that emptiness that they're feeling. And so by using drugs, this adds more depression. This ends up accelerating their eating disorder. This increases their anxiety. And this causes further low self-esteem because now they're under the influence and their judgment is clouded even more because they're under the influence of an illegal substance. And so these women end up finding themselves victims of, you know, sexual assault or domestic violence or in a more hurtful and painful situation where they end up causing more pain to themselves than prior. Again, all of this is to fulfill that void that they have from not having a father in their lives. And so here are a little bit of statistics that you might want to kind of see and look at. And one of it is fatherless daughters tend to be 8 times more likely to go to prison. They're 5 times more likely to commit suicide. They're 20 times more likely to have behavioral issues. Promiscuity is one of those issues. And engaging in illegal drugs or alcohol and so forth. 10 times more likely to abuse chemical substances. 9 times more likely to drop out of high school. 33 times more likely to be seriously abused. 73 times more likely to be fatally abused, meaning this may cause death. Okay, so 73 times more likely to be fatally abused. Now, this is a very alarming, very disturbing statistics because a woman can find herself in a cycle where she is being physically abused, she's being sexually abused, and she doesn't have a choice, and she feels like she needs to stay in that situation because in her mind, this is the best that she can do. In her mind, she's not worthy. So any type of love she gets is better than no love. And so she compromises her safety, her sound mind, and who she is in general in order to stay in a very abusive and very dysfunctional relationship. And on average, there's about 45, on average, these women are 44%, I'm sorry, these women have 44 higher mortality rates because they tend to stay in abusive relationships. And on average, about 72% of these women, or of women who grow up without fathers, tend to have a lower standard of living. So they tend to live in a more impoverished or poverty-stricken areas than before. Now, these statistics that I'm reading to you are statistics from the Parents of Prison Policy and Review and the U.S. Department of Justice Special Report, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the U.S. Department of Health and Census. So these are where some of these statistics are coming from. Now, overall, women tend to have these general symptoms, which we spoke about some of these general symptoms and we went into a little bit more details about them. They tend to have anger and rage. They tend to have feelings of abandonment. They are overdriven by success. They have trust and commitment issues. They have challenges with shame, sex, and intimacy. They experience low self-image, low self-esteem. It's difficult for them to sustain any healthy, lasting relationship. and they have issues revolving or surrounding money. So in summary, the impact of a fatherless figure or not having a father in the home in a girl's life and growing up is a constant battle with self-esteem that leads to feeling of unworthiness. It's a low quality of life standards. It's a loss of the sense of security. It's reduced mental and physical well-being, increased level of anger that can lead to rage. They tend to face emotional changes or challenges in intimate situations. And they engage prematurely in sexual activities, and they're more likely to become teen parents and to become promiscuous. And they're more likely to get married in the teenage phase than when they get older because they're seeking that love. And so this basically is a general summary of what it is like and what a woman who does not have a father in her life will go through. And of course, there's always steps that a young lady can take in order to have a father figure in her life. And one of the things is having a spiritual father. And of course, you need to, pick your spiritual father, develop that bond and that relationship. It can be a role model or a mentor that you look up to. And so there are strategies and techniques that you can utilize in order to diminish or even eliminate some of these side effects because that person has a father figure in their life. And sometimes even having a father figure in their life may still show up with some of these residual symptoms because, again, it's not the biological father. And a girl always wonders, or that girl or that woman will always wonder, why wasn't she good enough? Why didn't her dad love her to stay in her life? And what happened? And why did he abandon her? So she's always going to have those questions. And she may also have, those emotions of abandonment. However, if there's a male figure in her life, even if she wonders about that, the impact is going to be lessened. The impact is going to be a whole lot less than if she does not have that male figure in her life. And so get plugged in. There are support groups and social groups out there in women's ministries. There are mentors and programs out there that you can get involved in and kind of get plugged into. And I'm pretty sure that there are a whole slew of social groups. Whether or not there's a particular social group that caters to fatherless women, I don't know. But I do know that there's organizations out there that do give women tools in order for them to get over some of the cycles and some of the mindsets that they've developed because they didn't grow up with a father and they don't know what that love looks like. And so she's taught on what that love looks like. And so please get plugged in if this is you so that you can go ahead and break the cycle. And I did do a YouTube channel about women when they don't break the cycle and they have all this hurt and pain and they bring a male son into the world. This woman tends to unleash her anger, her frustration, the hurt and pain that she went through in the relationship with the child's father on the child. And now she creates the very product that she is angry at. She ends up putting that same energy into that child, and now her son ends up being just like his father, which is what she didn't want to begin with. And so women, and so ladies, I need you to go ahead and do heart checks, kind of see where you're at and seek the help that you need. Go ahead and, get plugged in ministry wise. And that's the best way for you to do. And I always say the first thing that you need to do is seek God. And through seeking him, everything else will be pulled together. And the dry bones that are in your life and the storm revelations that you're going through, he'll be able to revive them and restore you in a way that you never thought that you could be restored. And he's going to use that same negativity that you thought was negative, and he's going to end up using that and using you to minister to those very same people. And so that's how awesome God is, and that's how he works. And so thank you for tuning in. Go ahead and hit that like button. go ahead and hit the notification bell as well. And so thank you for tuning in. Leave your comments, any topics you might want to hear about or know more about, please go ahead and leave your comments below. And also, if you want to share your story with me, or if you want any type of mentoring, I'm open for that. You can always go ahead and send me a personal email at rb.stormrevelations@gmail.com. Again, it's RB, R as in Rose, B as in boy, period, or dot, Storm Revelations, just like the name of the channel, at gmail.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. God bless. Bye.